I'm gonna kick this off. Okay, let's go. So first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for coming here. You could have been at any Zoom meeting, but you're here. But seriously, we're navigating a time with so many unknowns and so much rapidly changing information, and the dance world, amongst with many other communities, has been greatly impacted, and we're doing our best over here. So I want to first thank Doctors for Dancers for putting this together. Just so you know, a little bit of housekeeping. Please keep your mics muted. Please be mindful that we are today having a panel with medical professionals making their most current recommendations. However, it is up to you to consider different information and understand that this is constantly changing. Studies are constantly changing. We're coming in from many different locations internationally and within the US. So each community also is in a different place in the curve with COVID. And again, we're doing our best to address, should a studio choose to open, what are some of the safety practices and things to consider. So awesome, okay. Great. So a little bit about me, in case you're like, who's this person talking as? My name is Galit Friedlander. First and foremost, I am a dancer. I am a mover. It is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. It is a part of my soul. I just need to first, at the core of that, I worked as a professional dancer. Currently, I'm the creator and host of the Dance Speak podcast. So quick plug if you want to check it out: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music. And I interview professionals in the dance world. I've been doing that for 5 years. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And the way that I connected originally with Doctors for Dancers is I'm a certified personal trainer. So in addition to teaching dance all over, I became passionate about fitness because I realized the body care, self-care aspect and the way that we strengthen and condition impacts our movement and our artistry. At least that's the background I'm coming from. So that's how we originally connected with Doctors for Dancers. So please get right now the power that we are a community coming together and how beautiful that is. And we're all in it, dealing with it at the same time, yeah? So pat on the back for showing up. All right. We're almost through the housekeeping. If during this, we're gonna give opportunities and we're gonna show a flyer. If you want to reach out to any of this, the health professionals, or reach out directly to Doctors for Dancers, we can set up consults for you. So I'm saying we Doctors for Dancers can set up consults for you. So should you have further questions, well, we'll try to do this again. We also wanna make sure that you get personalized information. We can do that. Great, we are recording. I'm going to put this panel on the Dance Speak podcast. So also if you want to go back, listen to any information again, or share this with a friend, I'm going to do my best to have this up within the week: iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify. And I think that's it. Oh, and last thing, thank you for the studios who are joining us to speak to everyone today and share openly and vulnerably about what they're facing. Please remember, it is a vulnerable space, and to be kind, yeah? So first of all, my co-host, Matty. Matty, are you in here? Is your audio together? All good, he's gonna join back in, but I am joined by my co-host, Matty Googs. He's a 10-year-old from New Jersey. He trains under Hubela at Icon Dance Complex. And he recently represented the US national hip hop team in the World Championships. And he has a podcast on Instagram called Talking Dance with Matty Googs. It connects heavy hitters in the dance community industry to a wide audience. Next, I'm going to start off with our first health professional. I'm going to have them self-introduce. Dr. Linda Bluestein, if you could share, where are you coming from, the hat that you wear in what type of medical professional you are, and your connection to dance. Dr. Linda Bluestein, sorry.
Okay, very good. I am an anesthesiologist and pain management specialist, and I currently live in Wausau, Wisconsin. I think I saw someone from Wisconsin who's currently living abroad, so that was pretty cool. And what were the other questions? I'm sorry.
Oh, all good. Where are you from? The
Originally
type of
from
medical
Los
professional you are, and then your connection to dance.
Oh, I was a dancer for many, many years and am extremely passionate about dance. That was my plan A, to be a professional dancer. And when my body decided that it had other ideas, I decided to go into medicine. So I'm super excited to be here and love to take care of dancers and help dancers get information that can help them be their best, healthiest selves.
Awesome. Thank you. And please feel free to include how people can follow you on Instagram, a quick handle.
Sure. Hypermobility MD. That's pretty much
Hypermobility.
where Hypermobility MD is kind of where I am on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My website is hypermobilitymd.com.
Awesome. And then next we have, and if I have a moment with a mispronunciation on the name or anything, just correct me. We're all human. Dr. Megan Meier. Sorry, nervous moment. Could you please come on the mic and share the hat you wear in the health industry and medical industry, where you're coming from and your connection to dance?
Yes, my name's Megan Meier. I am in Oklahoma, just like the Wiener, Oscar Mayer Wiener. I'm in Oklahoma and I do primary care sports medicine and dance medicine. I work with the Oklahoma City Ballet and the University of Oklahoma and several studios around the area, and I've seen a few people pop in, which I'm really excited about. My background is that I was a former dancer many years ago, and it was something that I was passionate about, which actually led me into going into medicine, because it seems like nobody knows what to do with dancers and nobody really understands what our challenges are as dancers, and you guys as studio owners with coming back. Is it same as other teams? Is it different than teams? That's something that I think is really important to consider. And so I'm located in Edmond, Oklahoma, and practice in Edmond and Norman, Oklahoma, and do virtual consults as well.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. Terry Hyde, can we get you on here? I'm at hype right now. I can't help it. I feel like we're at the club. Like, Terry Hyde to the stage. All right. Oh, so where are you coming from?
He's coming up on stage now.
Yeah, Terry Hyde.
Right. I live in England. I've come from England. I've worked in England. And what do I do now? I'm a psychotherapist. Some people may know what a psychotherapist. You'll have to research what that is. It goes deeper than counselling. And 3 years ago, I set up counsellingfordancers.com. And for those of you outside the UK, counselling is spelt with 2 L's if you're going to do a search for it. What is my link to dance? I started ballet class at 6 years old. I won a 5-year scholarship with the RAD, the Royal Academy of Dance. I was taken on to the Royal Ballet School, senior school, and then into the Royal Ballet in England, and then English National Ballet. I then decided I wanted to do more and did musical theatre in London's West End, which is the equivalent to Broadway in America. I did film and television. So I had that large spectrum, and then put it together with my training as a psychotherapist. And 3 years ago, as I mentioned, set up Counselling for Dancers. So not only do I do face-to-face therapy sessions, it's virtual therapy sessions, because I have clients all around the world. And in the UK, I've been doing face-to-face presenting workshops, mental health self-care workshops to pre-professional schools, colleges, universities. I'm a guest lecturer at UCL on their master's degree for dance medicine science. Last year in November, I went across to the east coast of the US, to Boston, to I've forgotten the other place, but it's just to the left of less than Boston is Massachusetts, left of that, and then down to New York City to spend 2 days with Joffrey Ballet School. So oh yes, and plus I've done dance studios as well, so either virtually or face-to-face. I've done a couple of summer intensives this year, one for Orlando with Joseph Gatti, and for the ballet, virtual ballet intensive, I think it was called. Yeah. So that's me, and I'm open to any inquiries, consultations that you wish to put my way. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Julia Iafrate.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm Dr. J, or Dr. Iafrate. I'm here in New York City, the epicenter, or what was the epicenter of COVID, and potentially the epicenter of dance here in the States. I am the director of dance medicine at Columbia University Medical Center in New York, and I'm also a dance physician. My specialty is physical medicine and rehabilitation, and then I'm hyper specialized in sports and dance medicine. My practice is very interventional based, and I have 4 offices in the city, and I do a lot of consulting with a number of the dance community. My link to dance is I was a dancer as well, but instead of being more on the classical side, I actually went very far from that. I did do modern, but I was a big hip hop and salsa dancer. So yeah, exactly. So I kind of love that side of things. And I tend to see actually a lot of break dancers in my practice alongside a lot of the ballerinas, just because a lot of them also don't really know where they fit in. And so I will definitely second Dr. Megan's thought process on, nobody knows what to do with dancers, and that's why it was a big passion for me. My handle on Instagram is Columbia Dance Medicine, and on everything else, it's at the new Dr. J, which is a little shout out to Dr. Julius Irving, sports medicine.
Got it. Thank you so much. So we're gonna dive into it. We got a lot of question submissions, and I'm going to go through each doctor and a health professional that's with us, and we're going to do our best to go through as many questions as possible. So starting with Dr. Bluestein. Actually, Matty, do we have you back yet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes! Sorry, I got really excited. Would you like
Matty,
to
turn on your video now, though, too.
Yeah.
I see him. Yay, co-host. Yay! Like, so dapper also. Matty, I would you like to kick this off with one of your questions, your question for Dr. Bluestein?
Sure, I will. Okay, so Dr. Bluestein, I take a daily multivitamin and extra vitamin C and D. I hear strengthening your immune system helps fight COVID. Do you agree? And if so, can you recommend other supplements for young dancers?
So can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
I want to make sure I had unmuted myself. So your question is a really good one, because there are a lot of things that we can do to improve our chances of, if we get this coronavirus, which, by the way, coronavirus is also what causes the common cold. So the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the virus that causes COVID-19, you can get that and not get, as most of people probably know, you could get that and not get that sick, or you can get it and get very, very sick. And although we don't know everything that causes the difference between being mildly sick and being severely sick, we do know some things that increase your risk, like having diabetes, or probably even pre-diabetes, having heart disease, having had a lung transplant or any other type of organ transplant, sickle cell anemia. There's a number of different factors. And what do these things have in common? We think that it's probably inflammation, and also your immune system not being as robust. So we tend to think of systems as being almost separate, but really it's all one body and they're all dependent on each other. So it's important to think of your whole body and how healthy it is or isn't. So I like to say there has never been a better time to get healthy than right now. And it's not going to benefit you just for this particular virus, but it'll benefit you, many, many years down the road. But ironically, this is really drawing a lot of attention to that, because we tend to think more short-term than long-term, especially, people who are younger. It can be harder to think about, 10, 20, 30 years from now. So yes, there are some supplements that can be beneficial. I've written a few blogs about that. And I know there's tons of questions, so it's not like we have a lot of time for this to get too deep into this. but it depends on the individual person and what their risk factors are in terms of individual recommendations. But some of the things that you mentioned, vitamin C is something that is a good thing to get through your food whenever possible, but sometimes as a supplement too. Vitamin D is super important. Unless you're spending a fair bit of time outside in the sun, a lot of us have inadequate vitamin D levels. So this is something that we can do blood tests on, and they're actually a pretty good marker, or they're an excellent marker, I should say. So there's a lot that can be done, and I think it's important to realize that and to feel empowered and hopeful that we can decrease inflammation, we can improve our immunity through the foods that we eat, and potentially taking supplements where indicated. So there's lots and lots of different sources out there, and I'm actually in the process of writing another paper on this, which should be released pretty soon. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much. And quick follow-up question to that. If somebody is fully recovered and in remission from a previous illness, so let's say it could be cancer, I've been in remission for like 5 years for Lyme's, and you're in complete good health and haven't shown up in a test, are you still higher risk?
Well, when you say remission, you know, that's a pretty broad category. It depends on what, you know, are you in remission, but you're still on chemotherapy? It depends on what's happening to your immune system.
Symptom-free, yeah, symptom-free,
Symptom-free,
no markers on a test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ironically, so the population that I treat is people that are more bendy, which if dancers tend to
Hypermobile.
bendy, the hypermobile population, and mast cells, which I'll get without getting too much into this, but mast cell activation disorders where we have aberrant mast cells or mast cells that cause release of chemicals. People who have that condition, actually, we find are probably doing better with these viruses because of the fact that they're already on some medications that help to control that. I don't know how many people have heard of Cytokine Storm. I can only see like 1 page worth of people, but raise your hand if you've heard of Cytokine Storm, just to get a general idea of have people heard about that. So it's not just the virus that causes the problem, but it's then the body's reaction to it. So we could go into all kinds of detail about the antibodies.
Keeping it, I know.
What's that?
Oh no, I know it's so hard to keep it concise because everything, I hope everyone's hearing, each thing could be probably like months of explanation. So we're giving the surface of it. Thank you so much.
A lot of the answers are, it depends. So
right.
But hopefully that's helpful.
It is. Thank you so much. I'm going to move over to Dr. Meier with a few quick questions. First one, should temperatures be taken at the door before entrance? And are there any nuances there?
I think that's a good idea. I think if you have a thermometer, especially the touchless ones, that can give you a good gauge. It can be a good screening tool. We've had several cases that have come through and actually tested positive that were completely asymptomatic that were picked up on a temperature check at the door. And so anything that we can do to try to minimize those asymptomatic carriers coming through or those early symptomatic patients that really just haven't developed out is going to be a good thing. And so I think those temperature checks, I think doing questionnaires for the dancers before they come in to make sure that nobody's starting to develop other symptoms can be a very easy intervention to try to catch some of these kids before they come and expose the others.
Excellent. Thank you. And whoa, this one might be a little bit loaded. Should parents or visitors be allowed in studios to observe?
I get that that's a tough one. I am a dance mom as well. I've got 2 little girls that are in dance and I love to come in and watch. We're set up to where we can see them. And do I feel comfortable dropping my 3-year-old by herself at the dance studio? You know, that's a tough one. So I completely get where your moms are coming from. And if moms are listening and dads, but I don't think that it's worth the risk of having the extra bodies coming through the studio. And so at this juncture, especially when we're thinking about safety, I think it's a good thing to think about if we're dropping our kids off and they're capable of going in by themselves, dropping them at the door to be able to do the handoff at that point without having extra bodies coming through, then we can mostly assume that they'll be more responsible as following the other safety protocol that we're putting in place. And so it may not be the right time for my 3-year-old to come back just yet if that handoff can't happen. But is it worth having me come in and being an additional risk that's unnecessary to the staff and the dancers Probably not. And so what I'm recommending to the studios that I'm helping with is that we have the parents do some sort of drop-off system to avoid them coming through, and then a pickup system as well, to where we're not just like having them turn loose onto the street, but we are keeping that risk at bay to where it's just our nuclear cohort. That's what I'm going to call it, our cohort. That's the people that we're going to be exposed to on a regular basis, that we keep that very small and tight and not have the extra bodies coming through.
Thank you. And one last quick add-on. If a studio is allowing parents to come in, is there a best protocol? Should they be in, like, if they are inside, even if it's not recommended?
That's a tough piece, because I don't know that any studio truly has the space to start spacing out parents. I know whenever I've been at several different studios with my girls, you're sitting next to somebody shoulder to shoulder. And so we need to definitely do the social distancing and the masking per CDC protocol. And I think that's just a hard thing to do. So I think it's probably best to drop the kids and then come back to pick them up, especially right now when it's more of an intensive type setting. I think that's more doable anyway. And then I think for many of your parents, this is one thing that, you know, I know that as studio owners, it's tough because you want to keep your parents happy. Many of your parents probably want that permission, to be honest. You know, I think that the parents just don't know what to do, and they're just wanting to be there and play their part. But I think you'll find a lot of your parents are less resistant to this than it seems like they will be in theory.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah.
What if the parents wear masks?
I think that that's a good idea in theory, but there's still some risk of transmission with a mask. And I think if we're talking about all the parents, it's just really hard to think about, well, where does the line stop? Because, you know, if I've got a parent coming in and then they've got extra kids there with them, and then we've got a mom and a dad that want to come, now all of a sudden we have several people coming for just a couple dancers, and we've increased our risk as far as exposures coming in, and then one person having it coming out. And so that's where I think it's just a good idea, until we get everything flattened back down, to probably say, let's kind of keep that out for now. And then as things change, we can start to phase that back in.
Great. Thank you so much. Terry Hyde.
Hello.
And this is really, hi, this is a question really for all ages. What can be done to help dancers who are still suffering from some form of anxiety and depression? I'll put it as and/or depression due to lockdown.
Okay, well, I noticed a question coming in. Someone said, is this just to do with children? Well, no, it's to do with adults as well. So that was in answer to the question. And I'm glad that you, Galit, that you said adults as well. So the anxiety is created by fear. And fear is always in the future. We can't control the future. So it's understanding what you can control and what you can't control, you know, knowing the difference. And what you can control is what the two doctors said before, what you can control. So as long as you know what you can control and deal with it, then the anxiety will go. So the fear will go. So if all of you have got pens and papers, write the word fear vertically. So F-E-A-R, that's downwards. F-E-A-R. F stands for false. E stands for evidence. A stands for appearing. And R stands for real. So false, evidence, appearing, real. Anxiety is created by a thought. If you have a positive outlook, then you won't have that fear. You can deal with situations in the future, but knowing what you can't deal with. So the advice that we were given by the two other doctors about supplements, food supplements, vitamins and minerals, and masks and social distancing, etc., that should alleviate some fear, as long as the studio owners also follow those recommendations as well. Now, as Galit said at the beginning, the situation in each state, in each country, now the UK is formed of England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and they're all devolved governments, so they're all doing something different. None of us are doing the same, which is ridiculous. And in exactly the same way as I'm reading in the States, you're all doing something different. And so it has to be localized and find out what you can and can't do in each state or in each country. So that was just sort of a general advice about alleviating anxiety. Depression follows if too much anxiety is created and it goes up to a higher level. I do apologize for my voice. I've been talking all day. So just be mindful of the way that you think about situations. Being mindful is being in the moment. Don't fret about the future. Okay, Galit,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Galit, can I add a quick follow-up to that?
Yes.
And that is that fear also impairs the immune system. So Terry's advice is fantastic. And if people can really try to work on that, that will benefit them again, not just now, but well into the future for other things. That if we can get better control over that fear, work on slowing our breathing, working on, like he said, about challenging your beliefs, that benefits your immune function.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Iafrate. Oh, these are some good ones. They're all good ones. I'm just like, this has been a burning one. All right. Should you wear a mask while dancing?
Yeah. So
and can you wear a mask while dancing?
Yeah, so you absolutely can. There are very few people that would probably have a hard time wearing a mask while dancing. Now, not all masks are created equal, as we've learned, right? And I think it's going to take some time for people to figure out what kind of mask fits their face best. I have a couple of examples of masks, but some of them, what we're recommending that people wear for activities are either a triple layer cloth mask, meaning that there's multiple layers to it, okay? And this one happens to have like a little bendable piece that actually sticks over your nose and stays there, so those fit pretty well. Or, you know, something like a surgical mask, on the other hand, these are technically, you know, medical masks, and we're typically not recommending dancers use these because when you're panting, you can actually suck in the mask and it actually kind of gets stuck and your tongue will get it wet. And so these are probably not great to dance in, for example. So something that kind of holds its shape a little bit better is probably a better option in terms of what to use. There was a study that was done at Florida Atlantic University that actually showed that the quilted masks, so things that are more like this, that are either triple layer or like quilting material, actually slowed the spread from somebody coughing or sneezing more than a handkerchief did, more than a bandana style mask did, and more than even like these conical, now this is a fake N95 mask. It's not a real N95, but it's shaped like an N95. However, this is the second best option because it gives you a little bit more room in terms of like when you're breathing, it doesn't lose its shape so much. And so it can actually maintain its shape so that you're not, you know, feeling quite so suffocated by it. Because a lot of people have a hard time with the cloth being up against their mouth when they're breathing hard. And so that's a big thing. The other style of mask, is like a duckbill. So this is actually an N95 mask, but there's no valve on it. But they have these in cloth versions too. And so a duckbill mask, which goes over your head the same way, I'm not going to do it, but that again gives you lots more space in terms of breathing. So those are the types of masks that I'm typically recommending right now.
Thank you so much. I didn't mean to almost cut you off. And then these masks, so I know, like, I go on Amazon and I don't know if a seller is trustworthy. I'm not able to find N95. Do you have any recommendations around making a purchase and how to know if something's fake?
So right now we're not actually recommending people dance in N95s because, so this is an actual N95. They're supposed to be fitted to your face, which most people are not having N95s fitted to their faces. And these are needed for medical use, especially if we do get a second wave. You need your healthcare professionals to be able to be safe so that we can take care of you without getting sick ourselves. Otherwise, we're useless to you. So one way to test if these are legitimate N95s is, can you see that? It says NIOSH on it. And so that tells you that those are real N95 masks, whereas this one, which is supposed to be an N95, no NIOSH on here. The other thing though is this valve actually helps to filter air on the way in, but it lets me breathe my normal air out. So this actually doesn't block me from spraying particles at other people. So if I'm sick, this is actually not a good mask to wear because I'm less likely to keep my particles from spreading than something like even this cloth mask would do. So this is why I'm not recommending dancers dance in something like this. The shape of this is good, which is why this one's actually probably okay. And then these other fabricy masks that have the little breathing valves on them, you can see I have a ton of these things. The little breathing valves, these help, it makes it easier to breathe, but again, this allows me to breathe unfiltered air out, which means that the cough or sneeze that I do in here has an easier time spreading. So instead of only going maybe 2.5 inches like it would with this cloth mask, it might go 8 inches, it might go a foot, it might go as far as, I think the worst is the bandana style ones, they go up to 3 feet. Whereas a regular cough can travel up to 8 feet in terms of distance.
And is it okay, I mean, it's a question, is it okay if the students are wearing a mask, but the teacher is not?
Yeah, so we actually had a conversation about this the other day. It is not okay. We need our teachers to be wearing masks because another study recently that came out from, I think it was from Auckland, New Zealand, they actually found that teachers counting or yelling actually had further distance traveled in terms of particles than just coughing does. So when you cough, it travels about 8 feet. We're seeing that when they yell or are counting or, singing, I guess, that can travel, further, even up to 10 feet. So the risk is actually higher. So I made a recommendation that maybe they need to consider wearing a mask, but having like a mic underneath the mask so that they can count and everyone can hear them over a loudspeaker as opposed to them yelling so loud.
Awesome, thank you. And I have to, sorry, one thing, I'm seeing a lot of really good questions. I don't know if we'll get into them. So I just want to be very clear. Is any mask going to 100% protect everyone from the virus?
No.
Just to,
Even in the hospital, when we wear our N95 masks, and that is for our protection against our COVID patients, that only filters out 95% of particles. So even the best mask that we have doesn't do that. And really, we're not recommending people dance in N95. So we need to continue to social distance. That's why partnering's probably not a good idea. Transitions are probably not a good idea. You're basically going to have to dance in a bubble. So you're going to have a little circle around you that gives you, maybe 10 feet of distance from the next person over, and you're going to be dancing in a mask or at least a face shield. If somebody has exercise-induced asthma and they can't tolerate a mask, then a face shield would be the next best option.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back around with more questions, and I see the questions in here. Really, we're going to do our best. Really, really great. Great inquiries. Okay, so Dr. Bluestein, do studios need to shut off their water fountains?
I think that
should they?
Should they? Yes. I think that it's by far preferred for people to bring in their own water, however much that dancers bring in their own water, however much they need for the time period that they're going to be there, rather than refilling their water bottles there or putting their mouth up against the water fountain. It's best that they bring in their own water bottle that's labeled as theirs and or easily identified as theirs. They keep that just to themselves, no sharing of water or anything like that. And then they take it home, wash it, and refill it again for the next day.
Thank you. And is it okay to bring outside food in to eat? If so, what's the safest protocol?
So the safest thing would be to bring in snacks or things that don't need to be heated in a microwave or something like that. You want it to be, not something that's messy, something that's more, well contained, and whatever is appropriate to the circumstances. So if someone is coming in for a 1-hour class or, a 2-hour class, depending on the age, that they probably don't really need to bring in food. But if they're doing a summer intensive and they're there all day, then it's much more appropriate for them to have food. So it depends on the age, the person's medical problems. If they have diabetes, for example, then they need to have something on them in case they feel that their blood sugar is getting low. But for a lot of people, whereas before maybe it would be okay to have a snack, they probably should try to do as much of their eating at home as possible.
Thank you. And then should rooms be cleaned in between classes? And do you have any recommendations around the best way to sanitize between classes?
So I would say that's definitely true if you're changing groups. If you're doing another class with the exact same group that was just in there, it's probably a lot less important than if you're changing from one group to another group. And so if you are, the most important things to sanitize are the things that people will have touched. So the bar in a ballet class or any other class that would be touching the bar. And you know, if it's more like a modern and they might be touching the floor, then definitely cleaning the floor. And there are no necessarily special products that people need to use. There's a lot of products that have been approved for use. So most like disinfectant type products are acceptable for that.
Perfect.
Bathrooms are another important thing to clean.
And I'm seeing a question, should, if you're using props in a class, is it better that a studio has props for all their dancers and properly sanitizes it? Or do they have dancers bring their own props, but there is the risk that they haven't properly sanitized?
I think it's much better if we think of, I forget who it was who just said something about a bubble, but if you think about each student as kind of being their own bubble, and we're trying to get each bubble to be in as little contact with the other bubbles as possible. And so if they can bring things in from home, but no one else is touching it besides them, then that would be one way to do it. I think it's hard for probably people to be sanitizing props in addition to everything else. I think maybe minimizing the use of props and or having them bring in their own.
Great. And is the CDC or is it the WHO or both that have the approved list of sanitizers?
That's a good question. I know there's various different organizations. There's all kinds of lists that you can find online. There's Canadian, there's, you know, I think probably is WHO and or I'm sure they all have various different lists of approved sanitizers, but you know, this virus is not difficult to kill. That's the thing. I mean, it's, you know, we generally like fomite transmission where it goes from one, like touching something to another thing is not that great. We think it really is respiratory. And so, but we still, you know, we need to be cautious whenever we can. Okay.
Thank you so much. I have so many more questions I want to ask, but I know that we have to keep it moving. And before I go to the next medical professional, Matty, you had a question for Dr. Bluestein. Matty, I will come back to you, Matty, okay? If you can hear me but can't respond, I will come back to you. Oh, okay. Matty, are you ready with your question? Yeah. For Dr. Bluestein. Mm-hmm.
So, do we need to change our clothes in between classes?
So, you know, I think with everything that we consider, we need to weigh the risks and the benefits. So I've heard about some studios having like one-way traffic, and some stores will do that, where you come in one door and then you exit another door. And if changing clothes in between means that now you're crossing each other and or, you know, that's difficult because you have to go into a space, and how do you, from the practical aspects of that, I think are very challenging. Would that be a good thing to do? Potentially. But again, we know that the virus is found in stool. So you want to close the toilet lid before you flush, especially because, you know, if you're in the bathroom and you close the lid and then you flush, it's not spraying, you know, kind of all over the room potentially. If it's one of those really powerful toilets that can, you know, kind of splatter, not splatter, that sounds really horrible. But anyway, we don't feel like there's really a lot of transmission relative to sweat. So changing clothes, I would say in general, is a probably less important thing than a lot of the other protocols that, you know, I think in general, it's a good idea not to make things overly cumbersome and make it really hard to remember what are the rules for parents and for the kids.
Can I just add to that really quick?
Sure.
Sorry, I would say maybe it might not be a bad idea, instead of changing your clothes, if you're noticing your mask is like just drenched in sweat, it might be a good idea to have a second mask, and that might be something you might want to change between classes.
Definitely.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Questions? All right, Dr. Meier, is it safe to dance outside? And I want everyone to keep in mind still, if I may, and professionals, please like put me in check if I'm incorrect, but the CDC is also, they have some very basic guidelines. So also like that should be, everything else should be on top of it. But is it safe to dance outside? And what temperature is okay to dance outside?
That's a tough one, you know, and I think that it has to do with a lot of things. Whenever we're recommending athletes that are not dancers that typically practice outside, when we're recommending them to practice outside versus come in, it has to do with several factors on what the weather is doing in that environment. And so some of that's going to be temperature, but we also factor in humidity and what the wind's doing. And so all these things factor in with the way the body is able to cool itself. If we have a shade place available to dance under versus not, that's also going to factor in. And so we use something called the wet bulb globe temperature. And so that factors those things in for us instead of just giving us the temperature, because 90 degrees may not be a big deal if there's a good breeze and low humidity, whereas 85 degrees with super high humidity and no breeze can make a big difference and cause heat stroke. And so that's where we want to utilize that. And so you can use that on, like I think the National Weather Service. If you just use that, you can type in your zip code, it will show you where you're at as far as the wet bulb globe temperature, whether that's going to be a green, and it's just kind of like a traffic light. Green lights go. If it's going to be no color, usually that's okay. But yellow starts to get dicey. Red is a hard stop, and then black is you're going to get sick if you practice outside. And each one of those has associated amount of times that you can participate in sports outdoors as well, which the Weather Service also gives us. So I think it's going to be, one of those that you could look at if that's something you're planning on doing outside. But right now in places like Oklahoma and Arizona, it's probably going to be a no-go, because I think the risks of being outdoors bring up a whole extra component. We're still going to need a space. That's not going to change anything. We're still going to need to potentially mask, because I think it's going to be really hard to really separate from each other because we're still blowing particles. And so if we're going to be doing that outdoors, it just could be more cumbersome and more uncomfortable. And so that's something to think about. The other thing too, as far as thinking about the number of people, because I know people have asked me, well, what about if we go outside, can we have more people participate at once? And that's just such a hard thing, because if I have 10 to 15 students, that's going to be a lot more controllable than 50 students, which could start interacting with each other more, even if you did have the potential to space. And so a lot of states have very specific rules on this, which we should follow as well as far as gatherings. But I think that it's going to be a tough one being able to apply that. But outdoors is a safer place, we know, in terms of COVID risk and COVID exposure. But to keep your students as safe as possible and your company members as safe as possible, I would still have the separation in play even when you're outdoors.
Thank you. This was so informative, even about that. I was thinking like, oh, if there's a breeze outdoors, that really speaks to the nuance of all of this. And I'm seeing questions. This really goes out to the whole panel. I'm seeing these questions about ventilation. What if you don't have, if you only have a fan? What type of ventilation system is best, or air purifier? Is there anything that you can speak to about that as studios are navigating this? And I want to also add in dancers. Even if you're not a studio owner, these are good things to know. So you have questions you can ask the studios, and you can also discern for yourself where you feel comfortable at. So basically, from the panel, any recommendations or insights around what if you only have a fan and you don't have AC? Is there any type of safer AC to use, or might you be recirculating something and it becomes less safe in the atmosphere?
So Dr. Meier and I were actually talking about this yesterday, and we think, so first of all, a fan is probably not a great option, because that really is going to kind of blow and circulate air from one bubble for one person towards other ones. And a lot of those air conditioning units that are up top, that are like the bar air conditioning units that just blow air kind of straight down towards you, same thing can happen there. There's been a couple of studies that have looked at restaurants, for example, and they noticed that if somebody's sick who's right by an air conditioner, that air conditioner will blow their germs back towards the other areas, the other tables that were also in line of that air conditioner. Whereas on the other side of the restaurant, those people didn't get sick. And that's because that air conditioner wasn't necessarily blowing air into that direction. So it's a really tough question, especially for people that, don't have outdoor air accessibility, or if it's really hot. I know Arizona's a heat wave right now. And so that's kind of up for debate still. I'd love to know, what some of the people in the warmer states think, but I would really recommend against fans if you don't have a really good air conditioning unit. And those big bar air conditioners tend to just kind of recirculate a lot of the same air, which is not necessarily in your best interest.
I think a big piece with all of these cooling plans, and like I saw a comment about Molecule, which I've had several people ask about, and all these disinfecting programs or units for the air system, is that we don't know. There's no study out there on any of these that are being marketed around saying, oh, you need this to purify your classrooms, you need this to come into your studio. The companies that are putting out the numbers, they did those numbers, and it's not been any large scale unbiased study that in the scientific community would be considered to be fact or data. And so that's a hard thing because these things are expensive. And when you're looking at investing into these things, I would want to know that they work and that they're scientifically sound before I added those. Because on one hand, worst case scenario is you spend all this money and they don't do anything. Or I guess one best case scenario, I guess, if they're not going to work. But the worst case scenario is that they could actually cause harm, like with the AC situation that we were just discussing. So I think that's one thing to think about, is that, you know, we kind of have to weigh the pros and cons as far as running the AC. We need to take every precaution as possible, because in Arizona, you're not going to be dancing if you have no AC unit, you know. And do we need to go and add all these extra bells and whistles to that? I don't think we have an answer for that yet. And so I know that's not a great answer, and I've seen that one come up several times on the feed or on the chat. But I think keep that piece. That's probably on your lowest priority right now in terms of adjusting your whole AC system. And I think we need to focus our biggest priorities on what we can control, being the spacing and the masking, since those are very easy interventions that don't cost a lot, don't take a whole lot of extra effort. It's just a little more uncomfortable, which is something that we can train into. You know, I know the mask wearing is hard, but so is, you know, let's say running at altitude, you know. And so if we're training to run regularly, you know, at home, I can run 3 miles at home, then go to altitude and really have a hard time breathing. So what I do is I start practicing doing a little more. Same things with a mask. So I may want to start at home wearing that mask more in my Zoom classes, and then start to apply that mask wearing in smaller amounts as I'm doing harder things at home. And so whenever I get to class, I have an easier time in it. And so I think that that's going to be the biggest thing. I know that's really hard to say everybody should be masking, but it's the best thing we have as far as the actual data.
Thank you so much. And I'm also seeing these questions come up around, should floor work, there's a lot of should, but floor work, is it too dangerous? Should we do floor work still? Is that okay? Is across the floor still okay? Is partner dancing just a no-no? This is for any of my medical professionals.
I think it's a lot of that's going to be dependent on your space too. You know, at Oklahoma City Ballet, we have a really large studio. Our Studio A is huge. And so the ability to do 10 to 12 feet spacing and do across the floor in small groups with small classes makes a lot of sense. But with space at a premium in New York, that may not be possible. And so I think we have to consider those things, because the more movement, we're talking about this air trail, and there's some good studies about the way that kind of blowback happens. And so we can't do our typical, you know, groups working through center. We may have to space that to do a couple staggered far apart moving down if we're going to attempt it. And again, we would probably need to keep the masks on to make sure that we're not blowing those particles, but still that's going to have more risk than being stationary. Same with the floor. If we had one designated area that's just going to be yours and everything could be cleaned up, then great, but I just don't know that that's doable for the type of floor work we're wanting to do with choreography. And so right now, floor work and partnering are just going to be really tough because of the nature of what they are. And I saw some comments coming up about wearing gloves for some of this with partnering with floor. Gloves are basically hands. I mean, in theory, it's nice to think, but my gloves can be contaminated. I touch my face, I mess with my hair, I do all these things, and now my gloves have whatever I've been carrying on me anyway. And so it's just really hard to think about it that way. Maybe we get down the road to where, again, we're talking about almost like a little family. maybe you've got these partnering subsets, but like a ballroom dance class where you're changing partners, that's not going to work. That's not going to be good. If we're practicing in an intensive, working with different people to start learning new things and new skills of partnering, I just don't think that's going to work right now. And so I know that's not a great answer as well, but I think as we learn more about the contact piece, we can probably evolve that down the road.
Thank you so much. Terry Hyde, are you still with us?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, no, it's all good.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Okay, I just have I have a question for you. Ooh.
Is it a difficult one?
It's a good one, and I think I'd say just as concisely as we can. Are there any mindsets that you recommend as a dancer is dealing with maybe not being allowed to go back to dance immediately? Or if a studio is only allowing so many dancers in, or you're not picked, or I know for myself as an adult dancer, like LA's locked down and I'm not going to the studio. I support the studios, but from a distance. And like emotionally, psychologically, you have something that you're used to doing that's part of your routine. And now, whether it's by your own choice or by someone else's choice, any recommendations you have around that not being able to return to your full dance life yet?
I think there's just one word, which is acceptance. It's accepting the new world system. Nothing is going to be the same ever, probably. And so accepting what anyone else's choice. Do you remember before I was saying what you can control, what you can't control? Yeah. You can't control what a studio owner wants, or what a pre-professional school wants, whether it's a student or adult dancer. It's accepting other people's choices, because we all have choices. They're unique, they're individual. And so to be able to say, okay, well, if that's what they want, and as long as you feel safe doing what you want to do, and you're not contravening anyone else's boundaries, because all of this, or everything that we've heard, is to do with boundaries, whether it's your own boundaries, your personal boundaries, or whether it's studio owners' boundaries, and whether it's students, or whether it's adult dancers, so children or adults. It's accepting those boundaries. It's no good stamping your feet and say, well, I want to go back to dancing. We spent 3 months doing virtual classes. And it started off with, I want to go to class, I want to go to class. But they've gradually got used to it over 3 months. So that could continue. So I saw one question about, what about September? And our school's going to open up there. Who knows? So there's an acceptance there that it may not happen then. And your second part of your question, what happens if the studio owner only allows a certain amount of people in and you're not in that group? So there is that acceptance. However awful you may feel to start with, the acceptance will relieve you of that feeling, of that anxiety, of that fear that I was talking about before. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. And I see a question, if you could elaborate just a little bit. I have my idea of what this means, but what do you mean by things never going back to normal? What does that look like?
Who knows?
I know, that's like literally, yeah.
Yes, who knows what it's going to look like? I mean, is there going to be a number of spikes? What happens in the winter when there is no sun? There is no, well, for the North Hemisphere anyway. And everyone's vitamin D is depleted. We think we've got over all of these things and it all comes back again. So those that are still suffering and that could be exposed to it, it may start again. So who knows what is going to happen? It's the preparation, the understanding, and that word again, acceptance.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. I'm going to transition now over to bringing on a few dance studios that are willing to be open about their process. And I hope as dancers, you listen to it, understanding the other side. As studio owners, you know that you're not alone in this. and that we can all be understanding that it's a very personal choice. And these dance studios and companies are probably also constantly changing the way they're going about things as they get new information. So before doing so, I'm going to show you a quick flyer so you can see very clearly how you can continue to speak to these professionals should you choose to reach out. And at the same time, are we good for a little bit longer? My medical professionals, should any of the studios, like if any other questions come up? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing head nods, awesome. Thank you. So we're gonna go just a little bit longer, everyone. And here we are. Is it showing up, this beautiful flyer? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing head nods. I'm like, you told everyone to be on mute. So please be sure to follow and check them out. And if you want, you can also reach out to Doctors for Dancers directly. They are very responsive. Should you say, like, you know, you want to have somebody go between or speak to more than one of the professionals. Again, this is going to be shared, the audio from this is going to be shared on DanceSpeak, DanceSpeak. I'm going to stop sharing. Perfect. Just one moment. All right. So first, we are going to bring on, and Gio, if I say anything in your name incorrectly, you tell me. Gio Hubela from Icon Dance Complex and in Jersey. Shout out to the tri-state area. Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I just actually taught a couple Zoom classes for a studio in North Carolina. So I'm in my studio alone, which I've gotten used to a bit, but things are going okay. Listening and being a part of this for me was so important. And listening to the professionals in the medical field, of course, is so vital to all of us as business owners. And I'll be honest and say I'm still confused. I'm apprehensive, scared, all those things. You know, not so scared in the sense that I'm afraid, but it's just I think it's just very confusing and it's overwhelming. And I feel like we're always in the mode of let's see in 2 weeks what it is. I feel like that 2 week saying it's been around since March. Well, let's see in 2 weeks how the cases come up and this and that, and it's a roller coaster. And I'm watching, you know, California shut down again. So I don't know. My mind is reeling, probably like so many studio owners and dancers out there, for sure.
And thank you for your honesty. And also, is there anything as you're navigating what to do and how much to open up, probably if to, is there anything that you wish, you know, it's very easy to be a critic on the outside. Is there anything that you wish people knew was part of your consideration process, or like something that's going on in your end as a business owner, as a dance leader?
I love the idea of, being on the studio industry side and also being on the dance convention side for so many years. But I definitely don't feel like sitting here talking that I'm in a position of what I'm going to do is right. And I don't want anyone to think that at all. So I'm looking and wanting answers as well, if there even are answers. And I think the biggest thing is we just don't know. We have to be safe. And I will sit here and say I am not sure what I want to do. I did start outside classes, and the morale of my well-being and my mentality and the morale of my students has changed. We were really enjoying it. We have good weather. I'm also in a unique position where at 5 o'clock in the daytime, a great shadow cast over my building, and I have shade to dance in. So even if it's hot, it's not that bad. So we're playing it safe. If it's overly hot, we'll be careful, but we've had pretty good weather in Jersey. And the outside classes are great, but the kids are congregating on the side. And I say it over and over, like, you got to spread out. You have to, keep distance. And as soon as they go to have water, you see four and five kids together. So I just kind of keep repeating that. But that does bother me when I see it. And, but they're just so happy to be together. And you don't want to downplay that. But, just definitely have to keep reinstating that we have to be safe.
Thank you. And then side note, Matty, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. I believe Matty's one of your students, right?
Yes, yes.
So awesome. And then if you or any of the other studio owners that are coming up have any questions for any of the panelists, please feel free to ask.
Okay.
And what, do you have any recommendations also, what has been working, what has not been working in the Zoom space or virtual teaching space?
I think that the Zoom space became a part of the kids just becoming really tired of it. And I think that comes from more of a place of something that's more mental, and with what they're feeling and what they're going through, the depression of it. It's like being isolated, being alone, not having the energy of class, not being together. So I think the outdoor stuff, if people can find a way to do it, even a little bit, I think it helps. So this way, if you find, I think, same thing with school, it might be a balance of some Zoom and sometimes going to school. Is trying to find some sort of balance so we can just reduce the risk as much as we can. Because the minute we're together in big groups and the minute we go inside, we increase our risk. So just it becomes about just keeping that risk down for all of us.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to just ask one last question. In this time of uncertainty, you have a lot of responsibility. I don't have to tell you that. And one of the things would be like, tell us how tough it is, which I think you've been sharing. How do you keep yourself moving forward? How do you keep yourself motivated? Is there anything you tell yourself or any practices that you have that's keeping you grounded and centered?
I think the one thing I know for sure that has gotten me through this was getting back to dance. Because I stopped in April, March and April I stopped, like took a break to kind of absorb what was happening and to figure out how long this would last. And then also getting more information without jumping into things right away and knowing how it was going to go. Being active and exercising, getting out in the morning and walking with my kids and my wife, taking 2-3 mile walks, and just being active has really, it just boosts your morale. It makes you feel better. And then now we're dancing outside. July 4th weekend, I took 2 or 3 days off, and I felt the difference in my morale and the way I felt mentally. And as soon as that week started and I was back exercising, I felt better. So exercise, being active, I think it helps you overall. And I think that's what's getting me through. And I'm just going to continue outside as long as I can. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in September yet with going inside, but I'm hoping that we can go September, October outside as long as we can until it gets cold. That would be my plan right now.
Thank you, Gio. Really, really appreciate it. And I've heard nothing but amazing things about you over the years. So we have people in common. You're awesome. Thank you. Next, absolutely. Thank you. Next, Racheal Nye of the Oklahoma City Ballet of the... Racheal?
Hi.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm Racheal Nye. I am the new incoming school director here at Oklahoma City Ballet. I guess some of the things that I can share with you is we are in our first week of our reopen of the school with lots and lots of safety initiatives. As you know, everyone, we're all trying to learn and do our best. I'm obviously not a medical professional, but I do think that we have done, and I have done an extensive amount of gathering of information, and I'm happy to share all of that, any of that with people who are interested. Some of these are things that Oklahoma City Ballet is doing, and some things that other schools are doing. I see the questions in the chat about, you know, traveling across the floor and things like this. And I could tell you 6 versions of what I have heard of people doing, and then you can, you know, make your own calls through there. I will share briefly that we so far have had a very successful go using the Health Check app that will expedite our check-in. Basically, we use this app where families can fill out the questionnaire with questions. They will take their own temperature and report it. And then as they check in, they can flash their screen to us and show us their results. It makes checking in multiple students at one time a lot easier. Some people don't have access to an app or a phone or electronics, and we could potentially do the manual app the manual check-in for them that way. Just in case, that might be a really great tip for studio owners. I will say for us, the check-in process with multiple students and keeping them apart and adding these times, health check by stratum, the app is called, keeping everyone separate, and the execution of that has been a lot of thought on the front end. We got to see it in practice in the last 2 days, and it takes a lot of staffing, but it actually went pretty smoothly. So I can sort of go into any of that if you guys are interested. I guess I'm happy to help in any way with questions or info that you guys might have. We're using the guidelines recommended by Dr. Meier, who we work with, as well as information I've collected through Dance USA resources as well. We're doing small class sizes. Right now, the upper limit in our large studio would be 12, but the class sizes are actually more like 6 to 8 right now. As she said before, we are very lucky with our space, and we have a 12-foot radius around dancers in our space. We are doing 100% masks for students and faculty at all times, and accompanist at all times. We have a lot of cleaning going on throughout the day, all the time, perpetually. I think as we're all learning through the differences in our states and cities and counties, Oklahoma City is unique in that the public school system has completely rolled out their plan. So they are starting on August 10th with a traditional offering of school. And I believe that, we will sort of all have to go hands in hand slightly with those things as well. Yeah, we had some happy dancers, happy me to get in and teach, and happy dancers. As Gio was saying, I do feel a great deal of pressure, and we do take the gravity of the situation and the seriousness of the situation. You have to be so hyper vigilant about every single element of everything. And that would be something personal for you guys to weigh out in your unique circumstances about how you feel about bringing your dancers in. Do you feel that you can provide them with all of these, safety initiatives that make you feel comfortable and them feel comfortable?
And Racheal, I'm seeing some questions. Could you say the name of the app again? Health Check by Stratum, or can you spell it? Maybe put it into the text box.
I can.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then if there's anything else that you wanted to share about your experience as a studio owner, I feel like you've been actually so wonderfully in depth, and I think it's amazing that you're doing this level of research and taking that initiative. So.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I had a question come up that I'm actually going to bring on Terry. Are you still with us? It's late in the UK. He's staying awake for our benefit here.
I am still here, yes.
Is there, okay, so Gio brought up, I think it was Gio brought up Zoom fatigue, basically. A lot of students, I would say not just kids, are getting burnt out from having to do everything in front of the screen. Even though they're more active than if they weren't, it's like this screen burnout. Do you have any recommendations around that?
It depends how many hours they are doing. Are they doing the same amount of hours if they were full-time, sort of 3 or 4 classes a day plus rehearsals, or is it just once a day? So it depends how much strain there is and what the strain is, what the burnout has created. The way that I work in therapy is I work on the uniqueness of the individual. So everyone's going to have their own limits. Everyone, especially adults, have had a childhood, the environment in which they grew up, what they learned about their family, themselves, was there any bullying? All of this sort of thing is accumulated in the adult. And as the child is now growing up, so for those children that are going through this is a new learning curve for them. This is something new. Whether they have the backing of their parents or caregivers is dependent on their reactions to burnout. Are they overdoing it? I think one of the list of questions that Jennifer put to us was not to do with burnout, but the reactions of the individuals. So looking at how each person can change or not change. Are they not flexible, as in Dr. Bluestein's flexibility, but do they have the mentality of flexibility? Are they pragmatic about the situation? Are they picking up from their parents or caregivers a sort of a very fixed view on things? And so that's what they have become. Are they thinking also that if I don't work hard, I'm going to be behind all the others? Well, of course, they don't know whether they're going to be behind the others. And that's going back to my FEAR, the fear, because they don't know. And so it's being more pragmatic about the way they think about situations, protecting themselves, making sure that they're safe without overdoing it. And that will then prevent burnout.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm going to bring on our final dance world leadership. I was going to say studio owners, but this is a dance crew, right? So Nico and Jena Banuelos, and if it's Jena, not Jena, let me know. I'm big on names. Like my name gets so mispronounced all the time, understandably so. I have all these weird syllables next to each other, so I'm very mindful. Hello, the Banuelos?
Hi. It's Jena.
Hi, Jena.
Yes.
Cool.
I
was trying to overachieve.
We are a dance studio, so we have
Thank you.
for all styles, and so that's what's been our biggest challenge with all this, because we went from a dance group and now evolving to a dance studio through this time has been tough, but she's really smart and she's been doing all the hard stuff.
So if you wouldn't mind, elaborating just a little bit, it might seem obvious, but a couple of things that have been particularly challenging in this time. And then Jena, I think you were about to do this, elaborate on the specific ways you've been handling it.
Yeah, so really relatable to the previous studio owners. So it's kind of nice to hear that people from other parts of the nation are feeling the same way that we are. Mm-hmm. We're doing similar things. One thing that we kind of started to do once we reopened back in May when we were able to, was we're doing time blocks essentially. So it's like 3 hours and we have a sign up genius. So the kids can sign up for those time blocks and then we have 2 hours in between. And we're capping those at 12 dancers, just so it's limited. And then they only could sign up for 2 sessions a week. So their hours aren't as much, but they could take them at home as well on Zoom, so they can still get the classes and the hours, but just not necessarily in the studio. And then for the families that aren't quite comfortable coming to the studio yet, they have all the hours that they want, more so than we would be able to offer in person. So it's kind of a nice trade-off there. The difficult thing for us is we have a massive teenage group of students, and then we have over 18. So and getting the over 18-year-olds, like our adults, into the studio has probably been the hardest for me, just because normally there are 40, 50 person practices, which is not allowed. So we're kind of at a standstill with what we're doing with them at the moment. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And we're taking temperatures and
everyone wears masks.
Yeah, everyone
and
has
all
to.
dancers are in a taped box that we put on the floors.
Yeah, that's basically kind of what we've been doing. We, a couple weeks back, saw the rising numbers in COVID cases in Arizona, so we closed our doors for 2.5 weeks, and we're slowly reopening and kind of just taking it, like he said earlier, 2 weeks. We'll see what it looks like in 2 weeks, and then kind of go from there and resurface. So. Mm-hmm.
And then with the Zoom, with our kids, what we're doing with Zoom is we saw that they were getting burnt out on Zoom. So we kind of like made it just more about having fun. We did like a lot of like Zoom talent shows. We did Zoom parties. We did like Zoom Netflix parties. So just keep the kids engaged and keep it more about uniting and having, letting know that we still have family. You still have family there for you, and you still have a sense of a community around you. So yeah, we dance and we let them, we taught them a lot of dance classes and stuff, but it was like a lot about just having fun. so they just weren't mentally drained as they were before.
That's awesome. And for the studio owners that are on here on the panel, I want to know, do you have any go-to resources as you're coming up with ideas and trying not to fatigue yourselves? Probably, because you're human too, right? So do you have any places that you've been looking towards, communities or keeping up? I have a lot of questions around tech here, which we're not getting into today, but anything that's been really helpful for you to look towards?
Kind of, for me, it's been other studio owners. Just the Arizona dance community has really been awesome, and we have had the pleasure of working for a couple other studio owners and stuff, so kind of just getting advice and kind of going from there. So that's our insight on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining, for being open about your process. And I want to bring on, as we wrap this up, I want to bring on our medical professionals and go through each one of you just to see, there's all of these wonderful questions. I know we're not going to get to all of them today, but hopefully this is a really helpful start, and we're also not over inundating you with information as there's so much to process. I'll go through each one of you, and if there's like one last thing you want to leave us with today, no pressure. Any thoughts? And Matty, I'm going to include you in this as a young dancer who you're in it, and we're talking about kids a lot. If there's one thing you could share with all of us as we're trying to figure out things for a lot of 10-year-olds out there and kids, I would love to hear that too. So I'm going to go down this list real quick, okay? So back on, I'm actually going to, I'll give you, Matty, I'll give you a few minutes to think about this because that was a strong one. Dr. Bluestein, is there a final thought you'd like to leave us with?
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button.
I did it for you.
Yeah, that's okay. I think that it's important to know that this is all a moving target, and unfortunately, people in the dance space are impacted so much more, any performing arts are impacted so much more than so many other professions. You know, my kids both do computer stuff, so that's easy to do from different places. So I think also, you know, being kind and forgiving of yourself and other people, and knowing that, you know, most people are doing the best that they can. And because I've seen some conversations too about, well, some people aren't doing the masks. Sometimes you may have to make a different choice and go someplace else if you feel like this is the information that I've gotten, and that can be a difficult choice. But just keep trying to get quality information, and you know, try to always be thinking about what's the greater good, because sometimes it can be easy to get really caught up on some of the fine details rather than thinking of the big picture.
Thank you so much. Matty, do you want me to give you another couple minutes, or
No.
just awesome? Yeah,
Well,
something for us to keep in mind. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I just wanted to say thank you for for bringing me on here, and basically all I want to do is just go back to the studio, hope this is all over, and, you know, dance with my family again.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing, interviewing on Instagram. I feel like this is a time when so much dance education is opening up in a different way. You know, in between classes, like, we can listen to the interviews and actually get into the mentality of it, which is really important. So thank you. Next, we have, you're welcome. Next, we have Dr. Megan Meier. Any final thoughts? Can you tell who grew up watching Jerry Springer? Okay, sorry, go on.
I think that, you know, the big thing is that we have to do what is necessary right now to get by. And this won't be forever, but it will be for a while. And so I think that, you know, dancers, no pun intended, are flexible. You know, you're used to doing stuff that's hard, and you're used to figuring out ways to do the impossible. I mean, it's not normal to do the stuff that you guys are able to accomplish with your dancers, but you do it. And so I think being flexible in that end, I think with the mask wearing, like we were kind of putting in the chat, there are no studies that show it's dangerous. There are many studies that show it's helpful, maybe not 100%, but every little bit helps as we get back to the stuff we love. And so if we want to get to the point of doing full-blown Nutcracker productions and everything normal, we have to commit to this. Worst case scenario, we're wrong and just wore a piece of fabric or something over our faces this whole time. Best case scenario, we save lives. And so this is going to be our best way to get to normal. One other thing that I did want to touch on as well is kind of the mindset of how you're using the Zoom classes as well, especially if you're rotating some kids into class when you're doing limited class sizes, whereas others are doing Zoom simultaneously. That's an easy way to have some kids come in and other kids are Zooming, to where sometimes kids are being able to come in person, whereas others are watching, and it's not just one group or the other. That said, using that time for those Zoom dancers to really work on technique and alignment can also almost use this time as a time for injury prevention, and not so much just a time of stagnating and I don't really know what we're doing. And so I think that's something to think about. Studio owners, like for a lot of this, really use this to be back at the basics. Use this time in a way that you usually don't get because we're so focused on choreography and the next competition and the next performance, to where we can make our dancers better and keep them safer.
Thank you so much. That's such a great point. One of my most impactful dance teachers I had, Amelia Etlin, I remember she came up with a whole technique because she couldn't make it to dance class. I don't want to share her story, but she literally came up with a technique that helped so many dancers, and it was in her own space alone, but out of necessity. Terry Hyde, and we have like 2 more minutes. Yeah.
2 more minutes.
Any final thoughts? So it's like 1 minute.
Okay, all it is patience, trust, and be kind to yourself and others. And what were the 5 things, what were the 5 positive changes that you had to make at the beginning at lockdown? And think of those 5 positive things that are totally different to that which you were used to, and stick with that. And if any studio owner wants to email me and have a private discussion to help them, please do. That'd be free.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Last but not least, Dr. Julia Iafrate.
Okay, a couple really important things that we didn't touch on. Hand sanitizer, first of all. Different brands have different percentages of alcohol in them. I feel like we touched this a long time ago, but people forgot. For example, this one's only 60% or 62% ethyl alcohol, whereas Purell is 70%. This is a better product. This is not good enough. So hand sanitizer in the dance spaces should be at least 70% or higher. The other thing, if you are worried about somebody having trouble breathing wearing a mask, the one thing that maybe might not be a bad idea to invest in and just have available for yourself is something called a pulse oximeter. These are like $20 on Amazon. You can check, it'll tell you what your oxygenation is. So if there's somebody who's saying, I can't breathe in the mask, I can't breathe in the mask, a lot of times it's just anxiety and you just have to get used to it. Like Dr. Meier was saying, practice in it, get used to that. But this thing can actually tell you what your how much you're oxygenating the air. And as long as it's, above 90, 92, you're golden. So having something like this just in the office available is important. Obviously clean it in between use. And then if a dancer is sick, they should be quarantining probably for 14 days to allow time for contact tracing and whatnot. And then I really do believe that they should have to go see a doctor before they go back to dance. I think they should have to be cleared to go back to dancing. We have seen some studies that are telling us that there's a potential for myocarditis and other different medical conditions that can come from COVID. I don't want to get too into that right now, but there are potentially some issues that could happen to a lot of our athletes, a lot of our dancers. And so having a doctor following you is really important, and just to make sure that you are not sick anymore before you go back to dance.
Dr. Iafrate, thank you so much. Is there a clear answer on how long it takes? How long do you need to have COVID in your system for it to be detectable on a test? I've not been able to find a clear answer.
Yeah, so usually we say at least 3 days. A lot of the tests, depending on which test you get done. So there's the antibody test, which is different, and that's for post-COVID. And we don't really know if antibodies prove that you'll never get it again anyway. So I don't bank on that test. What's more important is like the PCR test, or like that nasopharyngeal, the kind of unenjoyable one. It's not that bad. I get tested every week. So those tests, or even the saliva tests, aren't bad. They all have different levels of sensitivity and specificity, meaning how good they are at detecting. But usually if it's been at least 3 days since your potential exposure, and then those tests can take up to, some tests come back within a couple of hours, but some tests can take 7 days, 8 days, 9 days. So that's why we're keeping people out for a full 14 days, and they have to be symptom free. They have to be without a temperature for 72 hours. And I really think they need to be approved by a physician to be allowed to go back, whether that's your primary care, pediatrician, a sports medicine doctor. I don't really care who it is, just somebody who who understands COVID and understands the possible risks that it can have on your neurologic system, on your heart. I mean, we don't know for sure what's happening yet, right? Like New York got it first, so I'll probably see it before Dr. Bluestein and Dr. Meier do, but there's no guarantees. So I really want everyone to just understand that. Be safe, be smart. If you're not sure about something, please reach out to us. We'll try our best to answer it. And with the air conditioning and the fan question, I think I answered that in a private message, but there's a lot we don't know yet. So just try to be smart about it. I promise you we're going to get through this. Just, yeah.
Thank you so much. What a way to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for showing up. This is a first time, and our intention was to empower people around getting more information. And the information, as it's been said so wonderfully by our professionals, it's constantly changing, and it's everyone doing their best with what they are given. I want to thank Doctors for Dancers, who I'm hosting on behalf of, but really this is Doctors for Dancers who put it together. So thank you so much, Doctors for Dancers, for caring, for getting us all together. We are all doing our best here. Again, I'm going to be getting the audio onto the podcast, but please everyone follow up with these doctors. I'm going to put on the screen share one more time to get the flyer up, and reach out to Doctors for Dancers with questions. And we're also looking at doing this again. So please keep your eye out for this, and everyone stay safe and healthy. Thank you. I'll stay on for a second as people sign out, you know.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you very much
right.
for joining. Yes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thanks for the outstanding talk, everyone. Amazing information. Stay safe and healthy, please.
Hello,
Namaste.
Beatrice.
Lovely to be here with
right.
you all. Outstanding presentation. And I'll be sharing this with the Healthy Young Dancer Project Network, all these wonderful recommendations by all of the doctors and all the speakers. Thank you all so much for looking out. My heart is warmed by how much the community has come together. And I have hundreds of young dancers saying to me that knowing they have this support from all of you, it's getting them through. So their mental health in my circle, in my tribe, in my community, their mental health is improving. So wonderful. Thank you for the support and for everything you do.
Hello, Beatrice.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah, it's just wonderful how everything coming together and everybody is just rallying. That's what I love about the doctors and the dancers and the teachers and the studio owners and the parents, and everybody is just amazing at resilience. That's what I'm seeing. So it's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
We'll
everyone.
Bye. We'll catch up soon, I hope, Linda.
Yes, I'd love to.